Hey folks, Quilly18 here, and welcome to the brand new, very exciting looking Imperator Rome. Imperator Rome 2.0, the Marius free update, is dropping on February the 16th, and it is radically transforming the game. If you haven't been following the news for Imperator, this is certainly going to look a lot different. The user interface has been completely revamped, as well as a lot of the game mechanics. Now, this video is sponsored by Paradox. Look in the description box down below for more information about this free update. I'll link to, I don't think the patch notes are out as the time I'm recording this, but by the time this video goes live, the patch notes may be out. I'll try to have a link for you there. More info down below. Not only is there a ginormous free update dropping on February the 16th here, there's also an expansion, a DLC coming out called Heirs of Alexander. So in this video, we're just going to talk about some of the changes in 2.0, as well as the features of Heirs of Alexander. But on Tuesday, February the 16th, I will also be live streaming some Imperator Rome, I think, as Macedon, because I haven't done it yet, and I think it's going to be very totes apropes for the content that's dropping over here. One of the things that's new in 2.0 is this great Atlas map mode, which is just very gorgeous. It doesn't really do anything different. It's just literally meant to be pretty for great like screenshots and after action reports and things like that. This, of course, over here is our default map mode. So yeah, the user interface has been completely redone. The sort of 3D raised kind of marble looking UI always, and this is some of the feedback that was given about the game right away, felt a little clunky, a little dated. It felt a little bit more old school, and not in terms of a historical, setting, but mostly sort of more historical UI conventions. It also took up a little bit of real estate. This new, more brightly colored user interface with more sort of flat buttons and things has a lot more room. Most of the pages have all been redone. If we take a look at the province view, the entire layout has been redone to try to make it a lot easier to see information at a glance. I mean, just as with all the Paradox Grand Strategy games, and Imperator is certainly no exception to this, it's a very information-dense game, and the challenge is always, how do you give the player the maximum amount of information possible without it being overwhelming? And with the redo over here, I think it's a much clearer what's going on. Makes it a lot easier to see things at a glance, and I think just visually much more appealing. Even the outliner has been changed. It shows you a lot more information in a go. Things take up a little bit less room. All over the place, there's just like less need for scrolling and clicking through multiple pages. There's just a much better job being done at showing more information in one area, which is incredibly handy, including this new administration tab over here to quickly see your provinces, but also split things up based on different governor groups, which makes it a lot easier to quickly manage your stuff. I'm also a big fan of this new feature, automatic trade. So you don't have to manage as many trade routes. I mean, it doesn't really matter here because there are 0 trade routes available, but it's especially handy in your capital because you have a lot of trade routes there, and depending on your relationship that changes between you and your neighbors and things like that, you may gain or lose access to various trade routes along the way. So by turning this on, you're just telling the AI to try to do the trade for you. I mean, you might be able to min-max a little bit more if you do it manually, but it's really nice to have that enabled. For your capital, for example, you might want to leave it out for your capital and then just manually do your trade that way. But right, for this game here, I was being lazy, and I just wanted it all to go on its own, and it actually does work exceptionally well. These new flat buttons, I think, over here, so it used to be a series of buttons across the top. The sidebar, first of all, I think makes better use of real estate because, of course, we have wide screens that are wider instead of tall, so making more use of the edges of the screen tends to be better for real estate. And the previous buttons did look really great, but it wasn't always necessarily obvious what all the buttons were until you sort of memorize it. These icons are much more indicative of what's going on. One of the screens that is particularly worth talking about, I think, is the military screen over here, because the military revamp is probably the biggest thing in 2.0. Oh, that's hard to say, but it's a really significant one. When Imperator Rome came out, the 1.0 release, basically nations all had standing armies, more or less, which might not have been the correct, like, historically correct for the time period. I mean, of course, if you guys have played Crusader Kings, for example, you're used to the idea of not having standing armies around. I mean, CK2 did add the retinues at some point, for example, but really, it was Levees was the the sort of, I don't know, the rule of thumb, I'm not sure what the right term to use here is, the de facto situation for these armies, right? You had people who would work normal jobs. There were people who were working in the fields. They were working, you know, as artisans and so on and so forth. They were regular people. And then when a war started, they were all drafted into the war and given a sharp, pointy stick and told to go and stab the enemy kind of thing. And that was the vast majority of these armies. These permanent standing armies were really quite the exception. And so now in Imperator, you have that split up. We have this levies mechanic where you can raise all your levies and disband all. I can't disband them right now because I'm currently at war and all my troops are currently busy doing siegey things, so I wouldn't want to disband them anyway. But in addition to that, we have our legions over here. And the ability to build legions, these are your permanent standing armies, are a factor of a couple of different things. One of the things they're a factor of is laws. So for example, over here, I can't start raising a new legion in Greece. Our laws don't permit that. Now, as Macedon, I have a very special thing in that I start with this legion. And so because Macedonia, turns out they're pretty good at warfare. We start with a legion already in play. So these are more permanent and often much, much, much better standing troops. One of the interesting things as well is it's only in the Legion can you actually configure what the troops are in your army. Your levies are actually generated based on what culture you have. So for example, if I go, I don't know if this is the right place to go. Check my... Yeah, see, there we go. So I'm primarily Macedonian. So my Macedonian pops, when I levy them, they will be 15% heavy cavalry, 35% heavy infantry, and 50% light infantry. And this really contributes to the cultural sort of vibe of different armies, of different nations, because their army composition will be quite different based on culture. And it's not just about, well, I know I'm going to min-max a particular combination because it's exactly right. You can still do that with your legions, of course. You can sweet spot things around there. Although, based on your culture, there's a good chance that you're going to have certain buffs to certain unit types. So your legions are going to have sort of a cultural flair to them. But you're going to have a little bit more ability to min-max them, which is fantastic. Now, one of the things you can do in Imperator is you can drill your armies, right? You drill your armies and you give them more experience and they become more potent over time, which is fantastic. What about the levies? If when you disband these levies, they lose all their experience, and that is the case. And you're like, oh, well, that kind of sucks. Well, you don't actually lose the experience when you disband these. I can't show you now because, again, I'm at war. But you actually get a pop-up. It tells you, oh, okay, well, they had this much experience, so that is going to translate to... sorry, not this screen, although we're going to talk about this tech screen in just a second. It translates to military advancements, your traditions. So it helps to push towards here. So the experience that your levies gain help boost your traditions. So the more you war, the faster your military traditions go up, which is really cool. All right, let's talk about this tech screen, baby. Yeah, so things have changed a little bit in terms of technology. The old system was interesting. You sort of had a pool that was kind of randomized and stuff. There wasn't much in the way of, like, pre-planning, and everyone loves going down tech trees. It's actually one of those very, very satisfying things to do in pretty much any game across any genre. So we have 4 different tech trees now, right? Martial, civic, oratory, and religious. And some of them even have, like, sort of 2 sub-branches. Sometimes they merge up. I think the civic branch is kind of... Oh, no, it doesn't actually merge. Maybe I just thought it merged because it got really close together. Did I dream it? Unless different nations? You know what? Maybe what I'm thinking of actually is the religious tree, because it looks like it branches into 2 different sections, and it does. But then it does re-merge to something right at the end over here. So let's talk about the tech. What happens here when your advancement bar, when your research progress fills up, just as before, you do get a level here, which has some innate benefit. But every time you tech up, you also get an innovation available to you. Now, it doesn't matter which one of these categories you advance in, you just get an innovation, which you can then spend on any invention in any category. So for example, because I knew I was going to be warring here as Macedon quite early on, I spent quite a bit on martial advances. So I picked up military artisans over here, so military provincial investment cost is reduced. I don't know if I was that interested in that perk, although it also gives us a free province investment in Macedon, which sounds pretty good. But mostly I was trying to go down here. Basic training, get a starting experience boost, that's nice. Active drill, hey, 5% discipline, we know discipline's really good. And right over here, professional training. you know what I'm realizing? It might be a little different with Macedon. Or maybe it said something before I clicked it. But this is the thing that can unlock legions for people. However, it by itself is not enough. We actually then have to go to our laws. Again, these things change from nation to nation. Different nations have different sets of laws arranged over here. Military reforms over here. There we go. So, most places will start with the lower levels of military reforms, where they get big bonuses to their levies. So you see here, levy size multiplier is 5%, or you can actually go to military service to 10% levy size multiplier, but at a penalty to your unintegrated culture happiness. These mercenary contract laws makes your mercs a heck of a lot cheaper. But then we get up to Royal Guard. This is where you're able to raise a legion in the capital region. And most nations don't have this. Even starting as Rome, you don't start with this. Rome doesn't start with the ability to do legions. They have to go through the tech tree to unlock these sorts of things. So Royal Guard gives me a legion in the capital, and then Royal Army over here, unrestricted number of legions. So we can have a legion for every province that we've got kicking around over here, and really make that the backbone of our army. It also gives a significant discount to maintaining our legions, because the legions are fairly pricey. One of the nice things about the levies is when you're at peace, you lower them. There's no military cost. On the other hand, the levies that you raise literally represent the population from your nation. While they are raised, they're not working here, so they're not making money for you. And if they die in battle, you can lose units of population from their home province, which is, like, it's really intense all of a sudden. The other thing, oh, this is super cool. The other thing that legions have is they have their history. This is their history, because they tend to be raised and are kept permanent. Unless they're completely and utterly wiped out, they can also get these special distinctions over here. Primigenia, the firstborn among legions, the first legion that our nation produced. And as a result, this legion here has a 10% boost to its morale recovery. And it doesn't tend to gain loyalty to the general as directly. It's more loyal to the nation as a whole. I also got Legion Dedication over here with a boost to the morale of the armies, movement speed, and even more discipline. So these are perks that are just there. And I don't know how we gain more distinctions, but I suspect there's probably ways to get more. And then, yeah, you get this. As you keep playing this campaign, you're going to keep filling this list of history of all the achievements that this Legion has accomplished, which I think is fantastic. That extra added level of flavor is a big part of, well, the success of any grand strategy games, really. You know, it's the appeal to Crusader Kings, for example, the stories that you tell along the way. And one of the interesting things about Imperator, it always felt like it was taking some parts of Europa and some parts of Crusader Kings. And by adding more of this historical aspect to your military, you get, you know, you just get better stories. It's the sort of thing you love to see in, like, actor action reports. People do these great in-character write-ups of their various campaigns, and that is going to be fantastic. What else to talk about? Oh, they've added engineers as a special cohort that you can add to legions, which actually I did add to the slick taxis. I have, there we go, an engineer one over here to help with sieges. Was it smart to add it in at this point? I don't know. I have no idea what, you know, the optimal sort of thing going on, but I was like, you know what? I like faster sieges, so let's throw some engineers in here to give ourselves a wee bit of a boost to our siege speed, if at all possible. Inventions and military traditions, so we talked about those changes. Just absolutely radical change over there. That's very exciting. So, as part of the free update here, so the Diadochi, which is probably not how it's pronounced, but I'm really not an expert in history of this region. But these are the wars that happened after Alexander the Great died, which is the situation here at the start of the game. And so his giant kingdom that was like all the things collapsed, right? And a lot of these guys then started fighting amongst each other. There's a special type of war for these Hellenistic kingdoms, where I'm trying to think. Is there a similar mechanic to this in Europa? I don't know. There's a similar mechanic to this in Stellaris that I can think of, where here, as we siege out territory, it actually immediately sort of flips to be our territory, which makes for these really interesting kind of dynamic wars. And you can still, like, resolve the war. I could sue for peace and sort of quote-unquote white peace here, but I'd be holding on to my gains made so far. And there's a whole dev diary where they talk about the idea behind this, and it just makes it possible to make these large changes of land that were very appropriate for the era and this type of war, without being locked in sort of like this quasi-permanent state of conflict, and makes it a little easier to resolve the wars as well, which, if you are a militaristic player, playing as, any of these types of nations should be a heck of a lot of fun. There's a bunch of new models. You can build ports now, which you couldn't before because they were all fixed. I mean, there's like, I read through all the dev diaries over the last day and a half just to make sure to catch up. And I mean, it's like reading a novel. There are so many changes. This is not the same game as, well, if you played Imperator Rome on February the 15th and then you play it again on February the 16th, you are not playing the same game. And it's pretty fantastic, pretty daring. So that's just the free update, the Marius free update. And then Heirs of Alexander, the paid DLC, adds unique mission trees for the Antigonid Empire in Anatolia, the Seleucid Empire in Asia, Ptolemaic Empire in Egypt, Macedonia, and Thrace. So, for example, yeah, with Thrace over here, so mission trees. So I actually started one of the mission trees here, which is probably not the exciting one, Pearl of Macedonia. If I abort... There you go. We've got Antipatros' legacy over here. So we've got a whole other mission tree ready to go that has been customized. Wonder Designer. So when you build wonders, you can actually like go into making 3D models yourself. Well, you select it, but you sort of build your own wonder, which is really cool. And it actually shows up on the map. After you build your wonder somewhere, it will actually physically show up on the map. So for example, if one were to build a wonder, I don't know, say in Petra over here, you'd actually be able to see it in 3D. And I don't think that's ever been done, not even remotely close to anything like that in any of the Paradox games. Again, maybe like with Stellaris or some of the big mega constructions, but you don't get to like decide what it looks like. That's really neat. There's a bunch of new events, new deities, new treasures, new music. Oh, one of the other things, oh my god, there's religious changes. I mean, could look at all these different screens. I love how the special holy sites and buildings, they're a little bit more predominant. You can take a look at these work. I mean, some of these mechanics were already there before, but I just love the way that it's presented a lot more than before. Like, each one of these screens, and again, sometimes there's multiple tabs as well to work through here, they've just been completely redone. We have the military tab, traditions, legions, levies, mercenaries we can hire, diplomacy screen, technologies. Oh yeah, there's a little planning mode here. So if you're trying to decide, like, you know, where you're going to go, what you can do is you can do some clicking in planning mode and say, all right, we're going to want to grab stuff like this, and then you tick out a planning mode, and it still has those sort of highlight and this sort of like rosy quartz kind of color going on here. So then when you get your next innovation, you know, oh, I'll just click on this one because I've already planned out my route over here because I really want to get the cohorts. Well, I guess if I want to get the cohorts, I'll have to go down both sides, but you know what I mean. Shush. Shush. And yeah, you can sure hide the plan as well. Like, really nice quality of life improvements over here. Anyway, all that, depending on when this video goes live, hopefully you guys will have plenty of time to set your calendar that on February 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be, I guess that's 7 p.m. British, 8 p.m. Central European, I will be live streaming some Imperator Rome, I think as Macedon, so I'm going to try to get a little bit more of a practice in the warfare here, so that I don't hopefully do too badly. I want to complete some of these missions right away, too. Yeah, this is probably the better mission to start with. I was like, oh, I'll start with the mission that's all about improving our internal land. The thing is, you get this event that kicks off this giant war, basically, fairly early on. Like, this is going to happen. So I may as well take the military conquest route, because things are going to start flipping like crazy. Anyway, that's it. Folks, thanks a lot for watching. Again, this video is sponsored by Paradox. Check all the info down in the doobly-doo. There's likely to be some relevant stuff that I forgot in there. And if you've got Imperator, I hope you check out 2.0, because it is a completely different game. And also this Heirs of Alexander paid DLC. It's got some pretty sweet stuff in it. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.